hello everyone, we've been discussing the June 2024 paper and we've discussed pretty much all the sections except the information and ideas part. So today we are going to take up the information and ideas part. Now information and ideas has pretty much 4 topics, right? So the first one is the textual evidence, then you have the quantitative evidence or command of evidence, quantitative and textual. Then you have central ideas and details, in which you have the main idea question or the detailed question. And lastly, you have the inference question, in which you have to logically prove which is the best premise and the conclusion for the passage that is given, right? So today we are going to discuss the some of the questions that are from the information and ideas part from the June 2024 paper. And for everyone who is doing this with me, you should remember that this is exactly how you are going to get your papers in October, November, December, or whichever attempt you are going for, because things are not changing on the reading and writing part. Yes, there have been little, very negligible changes in the type of questions or the part of the questions that we have, but overall, the College Board right now, as of now, does not aim to change the type of questions that we have, right? So if we emphasize on the approaches to these questions, hopefully we won't be having much of the problems, right? Now it's very important first we identify which type of question that we are doing. Now firstly, if you look at it, this is a main idea question, right? So when you're doing the main idea question, it is very important that you firstly read the entire passage and you understand what's going on in the entire passage, so that you can go on with the option and see which option is actually talking about what has been talked about in the entire passage. This is very, very important, right? So if you read this passage, it says artificial leaves are developing renewable energy technology that mimics the process of photosynthesis in plants, right? These devices are silicon-based solar cells coated in chemical catalysts that activate reactions that split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen gas. The technology, while generating lots of interest, is not yet commercially viable as a large-scale energy source. To meet this challenge, scientists from many fields are researching ways to store, transport, and distribute the energy the devices produce, while other scientists are working to improve the cost and efficiency of the devices, right? So if you look at it, if what we understand from the passage is that this is something very efficient. This is exactly like things that are done in photosynthesis, but the problem that we are facing is that for commercial usage it is becoming non-effective, it is becoming expensive or whatever it says, so it's not viable for commercial use as of now, right? So we have to go for the passage, we have to go for the option that talks about the best that takes into account all the information of the passage and then talks about it and goes on, right? So if you look at option A, it says a continued research and development in artificial leaf technology is needed before the devices can be widely used as an energy resources. Now it's not the problem of research, and we don't know how much research we need. That's not what the passage is talking about. The passage is talking about the fact that currently it is not viable. Now how will it be viable? What are the things that can be done that to make it viable? That is something that they're studying on, they're doing it, right? So how long of a research can it take, that is not mentioned over here. So that is why we are not going to take option A as the answer. If you look at option B, it says artificial leaves were developed to mimic the natural process of photosynthesis in plants in order to store energy for long-term commercial use. So this is the complete opposite of what the main idea is, right? It says they were initially developed for commercial use, when we know for a fact from this passage that it is not going on for a commercial use, right? So this won't be the answer as well. If you look at option C, it says the recent increase in the commercial use of artificial leaves as an energy source has encouraged many scientists to research ways to improve the technology, because it is not going on as viable, right? It is not commercially viable. That is why they have to research and make it viable so that it can go on and be used as a commercial product. So this can be the best answer over here, but we'll read option D as well. Option D says artificial leaves split water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen gas using catalyst more efficiently than plants do using the process of photosynthesis. So again, this is not the thing. It is about the commercial usage. That is what we have to discuss, and because it is only there in option C, we are going to eliminate option A, B and D, and the best answer for this question will be option C. So that was the central idea or the main idea question. Now we are moving on to the next question, and this is command of evidence quantitative. Now before I start actually discussing this question, we first need to understand how we solve this question. And guys, it's relatively easy. You have to just consider the table or the chart or the information that is the numeric information that is given or the quantitative information that is given along with the context of the passage. Now, you'll have questions where you'll find information that is true as per the information that is there in the graph, but it should also be in line with the passage. So if there is an information that is not in line with the graph, obviously that is going to be a false statement and that will never be your answer. If there is a statement that is in line with the graph but not in line with the passage, so although the information is correct, but because it's not in line with the claim, we also need that is why it's not going to be the answer. The right answer has to be in line with the information that is there in the graph and the claim that has been made in the passage. Both of these two should be in line, right? So if you read this, it says the citizen of Standing Rock Swiss tribe is a student in a geography class. The student wants to compare the total area covered by his tribal nation in North and South Dakota with the total areas covered by certain tribal nation in other states. Looking at the table, he finds that the area of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe is 3662 square miles, while the area of the 𝗗់𝘗𝐴𝐴 nation is New Mexico is. Now you have to find the nation, this nation in New Mexico, the area of this. So if you look at the graph, the 𝗗់𝘗𝐴𝐴 nation, if you look at it in the New Mexico, the area of it is 1374 square miles. Now the option that has 1374 square miles will be your answer. So if you look at the options, it is not 4453, it is not 10864, it is not 2533, it is 1374 square miles. That is why the best answer over here will be C, because it is in line with the passage and it is in line with the graph as well. So both of them are in line. That is why this will be the best answer over here. These questions, guys, are relatively easier because if you understand the graph well, if you're good with numbers, if you're good with translating those numbers into paragraphs, you can get a good score on this, and I can guarantee that. So let's look at the next question. Again, we have a command of evidence quantitative question. So we have a graph that pretty much talks about three categories, and these categories are non-native tree species reported, and then we have three countries about it. So apparently this is what we see from it. If you look at the passage, it says Elizabeth Plitzberger and colleagues gathered data on 23 non-native tree species grown in Europe. They analyzed reports from Poland, Belgium and Finland about the number of these species grown in those countries, as well as the number of insects and fungus species that damage those trees. Okay. The researchers concluded that Poland reported the greater number of damaging insect species than either of the countries did. And if you look at it, yes, because Poland has reported 105 insects, while the other two have reported, either 11 or 28. So that is much larger than the other two, even combined. So you have to look for an option that talks about Poland and 105 insects. So when you look at the options, option A is talking about Belgium reported 13 damaging fungus species and 11 damaging insect species, while Poland and Finland reported more insect species and fungus species. So it has to be Poland only. So this will be incorrect. Poland reported 25 damaging fungus species, which is more than either Belgium or Finland. But you have to talk about the insect species, right? So this is incorrect as well. Finland and Belgium reported 6 and 4 damaging insect species respectively, which is far fewer than Poland reported. So again, this is going to be incorrect as well. Poland reported 105 damaging insect species, which is more than either Finland or Belgium reported. So this is the number that we have in the graph. This is the country that the passage is talking about. Both of them are in line, and because both of them are in line, the best answer for this question will be option D. And this is how we go about it. This is how you just have to, go with the graph, go with the passage, and once you understand that, you can just move on. Now, if you look at the next question is textual evidence. Command of evidence textual, right? So first, the best way to solve these questions is to find out the claim in the passage, right? If you know the claim, then it is going to be very easy for you. If you don't understand the claim, then it's going to be a very hard question, because the question asks you to compare or to match the claim of the passage with the options that you have. And the best option that goes in line with the claim that has been mentioned in the passage, that is obviously going to be your answer. So if you look at it over here, it says Callie W. Babbitt and Hema Madaka and colleagues assembled a database of materials used in consumer electronics by studying products in the lab and by gathering data from other similar product studies. The team rated each study on its level of detail, with a higher rating for reported data with more detail, and on its category consistency, with a higher rating for usual material categories for more closely aligned with the categories in the team's database. Based on these ratings, the second research team concluded that the data in a study by 𝗂𝐺𝐸 and colleagues would need less adjustment to fit the classification in the database than the data in the study by Martin, 𝗂𝐺𝐸 and colleagues did. So what they're saying is, when you have this statement where you have written, the team concluded, the team hypothesized, the team, claimed, or something like that. So whatever is written after that, that is the claim. And if you look at the question, it says, which finding, if true, would most directly support the second research team's conclusion? What is the second research team's conclusion? It is that the data in a study by 𝗂𝐺𝐸 and colleagues would need less adjustment to fit the classification in the database than the data by Martin. So the data that is presented by Maria would need less adjustment as compared to the data presented by Martin. This is the claim that is being made, and you have to find the option that is in line with this claim. Whichever option is closest to this claim will be obviously your answer. This is how you go about it. If you look at option A, it says the study of 𝗂𝐺𝐸 and colleagues had a higher consistency rating than the study by 𝗂𝐺𝐸 and colleagues did, right? So because it needed less adjustment, that means it had more consistency. Same thing, a little bit different in words, right? So if you need less adjustment, that means you have more consistency. If you need more adjustment, that means you have less consistency. That is how it goes about. That is why A looks to be the best answer. But still, if you look at option B, it says the study of 𝗂𝐺𝐸 and colleagues had a high consistency rating and a medium detail rating. So we don't know about it. There's nothing mentioned over here. The study of 𝗂𝐺𝐸 and colleagues had a higher detail rating than the study by 𝗂𝐺𝐸 and colleagues did. Again, no. The study by 𝗂𝐺𝐸 and colleagues had a medium consistency rating. Now, there's nothing about medium or low or hard. It has to be better. That is what it is saying. One of it need lesser adjustment, or one of it is more consistent. That is what we have to talk about, and that is why, because it is mentioned in option A, that is why the option A is going to be the best answer over here. Now, let's go on to the next question. Now, the next question is about, so if you look at the next question is about, again, quantitative evidence or command of evidence quantitative. It is a graph question. So, if we read it, it says Esther Sanya Menguel and Catherine Spekchit and their team surveyed 3 groups of people in Bologna, Italy, leaders of urban agricultural projects, stakeholders in urban agriculture, and general public to compare their views about the extent to which urban agriculture contributes to the social and ecological services that the team identified. The researchers used these ratings to rank the services for each group, with a ranking of 1 indicating that a group perceives that urban agriculture benefits that service the most. Using only the ranking shown in the table, a city planner in Bologna who is promoting a new urban agriculture project concludes that advertisements aimed at general public should emphasize the project's benefit to the provision of medicinal plants. So this is what it is. The sentence, like I mentioned, that is written right after when you say, it concludes or claims or hypothesizes. It's very important. So this is very important what's written after it. The advertisement aimed at general public should emphasize the project's benefit to provision for medicinal plants. So medicinal plants and general public. So that is very important. If you look at options, the first option, it says the prevention of soil erosion was ranked higher for general public than was the provision for medicinal plants. No, it's not the answer. The provision of medicinal plants were ranked higher for stakeholders than it was for general public. This is against the passage because it should be ranked higher for the general public, right? So look, it would be eliminated. If you look at option C, it says the preservation of cultural knowledge and heritage were ranked lower for the general public than it was for the project leaders. Again, it should not be lower for the general public. And if you look at option D, it says the provision for medicinal plants was ranked higher for the general public than they were for the 4 services, right? And if you go to the graph, you'll see that the provision of medicinal plant is highest for The general public. Now you might say that this is the lowest number, but the scale that has been given, it says that 1 is the highest. So that means the lower the number, the higher it is. That is why the best answer for this question will be option D, because it is going in line with the graph and it is going in line with what is written in the passage as well. So it should be both. It should not only be the passage, it should not only be the graph. It has to, consider both of it. So whichever option, goes with both of it, the graph and the passage both, that will be the answer, like it is given in option D. Now let's look at the next question. The next question is very interesting and it is related to inferences, where we are, given a passage, normally the last line of which is left blank. And as per the premise that is there in the passage, we have to find the conclusion. Remember that for the inference question, never go for the assumption. Normally students, tend to think about information that is not precisely there in the passage, and they, go for a conclusion that is not related to what is there in the passage. That makes it a wrong answer. Always the conclusion that you take for the inference question has to have some relationship with what is written in the passage. That is going to be very important. So if you read this, it says over 600 languages are spoken in New York City in addition to English one. Can find a Romanian spoken in the neighborhood of Richwood or Hindi in 𝗗𝐶 Park. Now, many immigrants from North China, where Mandarin is the primary language, reside in the neighborhood of Flushing, part of New York City borough of Queens, while those who immigrated from South China, so it was first North China who live in Flushing, while those who immigrated from South China, where many people speak Cantonese or Fujianese as the first language, tend to reside in Chinatown in the borough of Manhattan. Among speakers of Chinese languages, those in Flushing tend to speak Mandarin as their primary language, while those in Chinatown tend to speak Cantonese or Fujianese as their primary language, and that is primarily because where they came from, what was the primary language from the place that they came from, and that is why the difference, right? So because they came from a different place where the primary language was different, that is why they are speaking a different language over here as well. So that because it was the difference of settlement in China, so that is why when they came back to came or immigrated to New York, that change persisted and different people settled different places, and that is why the languages that they are speaking are also different. So that is how it is. So which choice, now they are asking the reason, this is most likely because which choice most logically completes the text. So we have to find the answer, and the answer is that different places where they came from, and different patterns of languages. So if you look at it, option A says a Chinese immigrant who immigrated to New York many years ago are more likely to speak several Chinese languages than our more recent there is no comparison of the recent or old Chinese. In fact, the ones who have immigrated previously, or the ones who are here from a long time, they are supposed to not speak the Chinese language as compared to the ones who are there who have migrated recently. So this is going against what's written in the passage. So taken together, there are more Cantonese or Fujianese speakers among Chinese immigrants in New York than there are Mandarin. There is a difference between these two speakers that is mentioned in the passage. Whether the number of these speakers is more or that a speaker is less, this is not talked about in the passage, so that would be an assumption. We cannot take this as our answer. Chinese immigrants regularly change their residences between Queens and Manhattan after they immigrate, rather than staying in one borough, right? Again, the passage is not talking about whether the people who are living in New York are changing their places, and that is why the reason of the change of language, that is not, again, that would be an assumption. There are geographic differences in the primary language within China that are reflected in the settlement patterns of Chinese immigrants in New York City. So the ones who came and started living in, the first part, that is the, the north or the Flushing, right? So they because came from a place where Mandarin was speaking, so they started speaking Mandarin. And then again, the people who came and lived in Chinatown, they were speaking some other language, and that is why they started speaking in that language. So that was because the place that they came from, that made all the difference. It's not because the number of the people or where they were living in New York. So that is not about it. So it's actually because of the settlement, and the different people from different areas of China came and into different areas of New York, and the dialect became a bit different. So that is why, as per the passage, the premise that we have in the passage, this conclusion in option D matches the best with it and becomes the reason why there is this difference in language in different areas of New York. So that is why this will be the best answer. So we have to have a premise in the passage. So these are the 4 types that we normally have in information and ideas. We have textual evidence, we have quantitative evidence, and we have main idea or central ideas, and then we have the inference question. So if you master these 4 types of questions, hopefully you will be able to get a good score on the information and ideas part on the SAT. It's relatively, as compared to the other sections, it's relatively a touch harder because you have more reading content. You need to practice on that, and you have to analyze and process the information in order to get to the right answer. But again, with adequate practice, you can obviously always do that. This is something that you need to work on. So this was the information and ideas part. Now we are going to discuss other question types as well. Specifically, this was because I'm discussing the paper, the June 2024 paper. That is why I'm taking all the different types into detail. Hopefully in the upcoming videos we are going to discuss the specific types and categories of questions in detail, so that you can understand how to approach all of those type of questions. So this was it. Thank you so much. We'll meet up again in the next video. Thank you.